Too much paper. Still not seeing the form. Okay. I'll use this one. When we sit down to set the tax rate, one of the things we look at is we have to set aside monies in case people come in and ask for an abatement on their taxes. And we have to budget for November and December, just in case stuff comes in. So we had set aside $10,000.
That's called an overlay.
It's an overlay. When we're talking to the state, we found out that the telephone poles that we now tax is in the courts, and next year, if we tax them for the telephone poles and they pay it, we have to set up an account where we can pay them back if they win the court case. So in that particular file, we increased it up to $20,000 in what they call the overlay. That moved our tax rate up more than the selectmen are willing to agree to. And so basically what we did is we reduced it back down to just $10,000.
Well, there was another problem. On the timber tax yield, somehow there was a mistake made not on our part, right? By the state. They added $10,000 into our timber tax yield, so they took it from $9,000 to $19,000, which gave us more revenue. And when they found the mistake, they had to take that $10,000 out, which sends the tax rate back up. Now, it wasn't a whole lot that they sent up, but it was some. So what we ended up doing was taking and offsetting that $10,000 that they took back out by removing $10,000 from our overlay and taking it back down to a $10,000 overlay versus the $20,000. So that would even out that $10,000 wash. And it actually reduced our taxes by a couple of pennies by doing that somehow.
In the end, and again, this isn't the sheet I was looking for, but it has the data. The town rate last year was $3.86. After our discussions with the state and adjustments and buying down the tax rate in part, last year when we finished up, we had 11% in our retainage. This year it's reduced down to 9%. We use some of that money to buy down the tax rate.
And that fluctuates year to year. We try never to go below 10, but 9 is
in
still
round figures, the town tax rate's increasing 4 cents. So we wanted it more than that, but we kept running into other issues where we couldn't do it without reducing the retainage to a level that we didn't want to go below.
That's referring to the town, but overall tax rate went up because of the school.
I'm getting to it. Yeah. Now, when you do the tax rate, there are 4 elements. You've got the town, the county, the school, and the state school. The county went down 7 cents. Don't get excited because next year the new nursing home will be plugged in and it'll suddenly pop up. But for now, the county's down 7 cents. The state tax rate increased 2.7 cents, around 3 cents. Again, the amount that they're going to pay taxes for. The big change is the school, due to the fact that our second year of construction, now we have the full impact of the loan, and it is an increase of $1.54.
How is that number allocated?
I'm sorry?
How's the school tax burden allocated? Is it based upon student days? Is it based upon?
It's based upon how many students attend.
Does that mean student days?
No, how many students from Brookfield attend. Not on how many days they go to school, but how many actual students we have attending the school system.
So if someone dropped out half year because they moved, it would be adjusted? Not if they're sick?
It'll be adjusted the next year.
Okay.
Yeah.
Once they're in the system, they're not going to... If we lost 5 students in mid-year, we probably would not see a credit for that half of year for those 5 students. But the following year, our numbers would drop by 5 students, and that's where we would see the adjustment.
On the other hand, if 5 kids moved in the middle of the year, we wouldn't see an increase for them
until the following year.
The numbers for this year for active students from Brookfield is 78, and we have 23 homeschoolers, which is a large number for such a small town. But that is helpful.
So 78 out of what's the denominator?
What's the population?
Yeah, what's the total population going to?
They're saying, the state figure, the latest one I saw says about 700, but last I knew.
No, going to the high school, I think.
No, going to all the schools. That would be the whole school
70
district.
out of 700, 70 out of...
Oh, out of 2,500, 2,600.
Small percentage.
Yes.
Yeah.
We have we actually have a very low burden tax-wise to the school district based on the amount of kids that we have.
Yeah.
Question for you, Ernie. I know our money to run the year-to-year expenses is based on the number of kids. Is the amount for when we bonded based on the number of kids, or do they work it differently per town somehow?
It is worked differently in that we have the formula where it's a number of students and it's the assessed property value. Now it's what is your burden, number of students, what's your ability to pay. Wolfboro, Tuftonboro, tons of waterfront, high property value. It's 75% student, 25% property value. That's the formula that's used.
And that's for the borrowing money, or is that also for the year paying for the expenses of year to year for students?
That's for figuring out the expenses for the town, for the student.
For the year to year.
Year to year. Okay.
Now, on
What
the
does it
bar,
cost us a student?
I'm sorry?
What does it cost us per student for those 78 students for the year?
The last figure I had seen is about 12.5. And that's a little bit below the state average. But I would prefer, when we get ready for our budget in January, February, I'll be able to give you very specific numbers.
But it's somewhere there.
The one thing I'd like you to know about the school bond issue is originally, and like most of us when we buy a house, it's all interest, and then it comes down, and the first tax year you take a huge hit. Well, the school board rearranged our bonding so that our tax hit is fairly level. Last year we bought it down because we had sold the Effingham School. We used it to buy down the tax rate for the people in the district. This year we don't have that. This hit we just took of $1.54 should remain fairly level for the next 30 years as far as that's impact on the school budget.
if they hadn't done that, our tax burden this year would have been way higher. Because what happens is it would have been higher and then the burden would have decreased as the bond is paid off. And what they did was they set it up to be level tax burden instead of a descending tax burden.
But that's a variable every year based upon the number of students. That was your point, I think, Bill. That changes every year based upon the number of students. The total amount that has to be serviced.
It gets involved, but basically you're going to go and vote.
No. Our tax burden for the bond is not based upon how many students attend. It was based upon, if I remember right, there was a formula that they set up per town at the time that it was voted into funding, and we were at a very low rate at that time, and that locked us in at that rate for the remainder of that 30 years. And that's for the bond only.
I understand.
And then if for some reason our tax burden this year is about $1, what is it for the school district?
The total?
Yeah.
$8.38.
Now that number will fluctuate depending on students. If we lost another 20 students, that number would go way down. But the bond portion of it will remain the same throughout the next 30 years.
In the school district, 76% of all our budget's people. Very labor intensive. The bond makes up less than 5%, I believe, of our total expenditures.
We did it at the right time, because we got a lot of money from the state to do it. It was our year. Every 11 years there's a cycle that
The
is
vocational centers.
for for the school funding as well. Just vocational?
Yeah.
Okay. So every 11 years there's money for the vocational, which helped us with our bond and the amount that we had to pay to the school. I think.
Yeah, we get 75% state aid on the VOC portion of the construction. And of the remaining 25%, we get 55% state aid, which means really the VOC, we get huge coverage. The middle school and the high school, we get 55% state aid.
That's part of that 11-year cycle.
The bottom line was, in March 2 years ago, when I talked to the voters, I said, look, we want $67 million. If you'll approve it now, the state pays, in round figures, $40 million, and you have to repay $27 million over 30 years.
So out of 67 million, we're only burdened. The district is only burdened with about 27 million of that debt.
Yeah. And the fact we had a very low student population that year when we went to bonding was going to help this town for a lot of years.
And if we'd have done it the year before, or 2 years before that, we'd have been eating a lot more of that.
Yeah. And if we had not gone forth with the bond on the VOC, we would have had to have waited another 11 years before we were eligible to get any money. Because the vocational centers are on a 11-year rotating cycle, and when your time comes up, you either grab it or you lose it.
Do we know how many of those 78 are seniors that may be going?
78, yes, there are 4 this year graduating, there are 4 juniors, and then we have 10 sophomores. That's where we're at right now.
And the other thing is the improvements at the building that's being made to the building, taking off those taking out the plastic walls, should really reduce the amount of heat and air conditioning that will be needed to regulate those buildings' temperatures using the geothermal.
And I think one way, I don't say hidden heroes here, but the 23 homeschoolers, what that would cost us.
Oh, sure.
We're very fortunate to have parents who are committed for the kids to be taught at home, and the responsibility they have and what they put into taking care of their children. It's a big savings to all us taxpayers that they do that.
But on the same note, that those homeschoolers also have access to programs at Kingswood, at the school district. They can still utilize the after-school activities. They can still play sports. They can participate in the band. Right?
Yep.
So,
and if they're going down to Boston to the museum, they can hop on and go as part of the... So we work very actively with the homeschoolers. Nothing but positive feedback. We're totally supportive of whatever they want to do, including getting involved in sports. The the bottom line of all those activities that I mentioned is an increase of $1.54.
so our new tax rate will be
Drum roll.
$15.74.
We warned, I mean, for 2 years we've been telling you that this was going to happen. We cut quite a bit out of our budget last year. Just an ugly budget look this year because we went, hopefully worst case scenario, on our first budget meeting. We are roughly within $10,000 of last year's budget, but now we get to start trimming. So we'll see where we can trim it down and without jeopardizing our infrastructure and our safety and fire and ambulatory responses, and without cutting jobs.
I think you folks do a good job. I mean, the fat rabbit is the county and the school, but what you control, I think you really do a good job.
We try, because we're taxpayers here too.
Yeah. And this year, so far, despite Mary Lou's checkbook not having as much money in it as she would like at this moment, we feel pretty good that we're going to be able to come in under budget for the year.
I think in the 9 years